I'm fond of saying I do not want to steal anyone's thunder at the beginning of these things. However, the updates in this past month, there have been so many, and there have been things that are kind of notable to everybody that I will probably end up at least mentioning something which partially co-ops thunder from some folks. So forgive me if you are one that falls in that category. But there's a lot of cool stuff actually that's been happening in this last month. It's been rather eventful. So and we're going to have updates from folks on some specific topics, but all right, in no particular order for today. So we met about a month ago, and there have been two very successful hackathons that have been run by Travis here. He's been really doing a remarkable job of the organizing and coordinating side of the project. And I think the attendance at these hackathons is a testament both just to making sure that events are scheduled and folks are aware of them, but also the stuff that goes in between, which is the slogging of checking in on issues and updating them, and then getting folks excited about attending. So I will let him speak about the details of those and what's been accomplished. But I just wanted to highlight that that's been a really exciting process and something potentially to try to sustain and into the future. This will be the last meeting that Travis is joining us as a Google Summer of Code student in this general meeting context. He's getting great reviews from me, and he's been gracious enough to consider doing some volunteer contributions after he's moved on to his next thing. But obviously we wouldn't expect the same level. Just because he'll be starting a master's program in the fall. But so yeah, he'll update you on the specifics. But it's been really excellent what he's done there. I just wanted to highlight that for everybody. Okay, another topic is, and this again, Andre, if you want to go into any details, Andre and Sergey. So we've actually resubmitted the SPH paper this last week. Andre has. And this is the first paper that describes the engine going into a different journal. There have been a lot of improvements since we got reviews back from the last time, and so we're hopeful for this new round where it's augmented and better and clearer and crisper and that kind of thing. Again, it's always tricky to find a specific journal that's the right kind of mix of interdisciplinary, because it's a very interdisciplinary thing. I think we got a little bit burned on that last time, but I'm very pleased with it, and I'm really grateful to Andre and Sergey to continue plugging away at it, because it is a product that we've done, as jointly. We've all sort of jointly contributed to Cybernetic, and getting this paper out, I think, is important for us to let other people know, and beyond just open source code. And then along with that is a new release of the Cybernetic code base. And Sergey can say more about that, but that is out there. We posted on that. It's very cool that that's come out. There've been a lot of bugs that have been fixed, and I think made more accessible to the community. So yeah, so that's really great too. Thanks to Sergey for getting that out. Okay, another thing which is kind of awesome that's been kind of happening in the background. And finally has kind of reached an awesome point. Oh, let's see, which journal? I don't know, Andre. Which one is it again?
I will paste the link.
Yeah, you'll paste. Yeah. Okay. So other news is that finally, after 4 years or so of doing OpenWorm, there now is a registered OpenWorm Foundation existing in the state of Delaware. It is very embryonic in that there are a ton of decisions about what that means and what's going to happen, and we're really literally just talking about there is paperwork that is filed. But that now exists as an entity itself. And this is a topic that lots of folks have been in discussion. about and have wanted and hoped for, but it's really been through sort of the collective will of many of us here in this group, but also Michael, who's really led this to conclusion. We've been working with a pro bono law firm that focuses on open source foundations called the Software Freedom Law Center that have graciously donated their legal expertise and time to help us set this up. And it's by no means completed. There's many decisions that need to get made, but what's exciting is that process has started, and we now have something that's actually that exists. So I'm excited for the next conversations, the next steps to figure out how to actually do something with that and what that actually means. But it's a long ways from a few guys on Twitter and on Skype now that this is starting to become more real. So lots more to come on that, lots more updates on that as we go. But thanks again to Michael for getting us over the finish line on that one. Okay, and then there's another paper. So sometimes papers come really, they take a lot of time to invest in getting them, like the SPH paper we've been working on for more than 2 years. And sometimes things happen amazingly rapidly, and we'll see, how it goes. But so Gopal Sarma, who's been volunteering for the project, basically wrote a paper as fast as maybe I would write a blog post, and on some of the topics that he was seeing with regards to testing and sort of using OpenWorm as an example. And this is just like a few weeks ago. And he sent over a draft which looked almost finished to begin with. And he was like, I don't want to, overstep my boundaries. He was very gracious, but he's like, this is a paper, maybe we want to put it out. And so I was like, wow, it's like I've never seen anything happen that quickly. He was like, yeah, over the weekend I wrote some stuff down. I was like, are you kidding me? So so it made sense to connect him and get the feedback of a few folks it was directly touching. Because it involved things like some of the channel worm stuff and some of the SciUnit stuff. So we looped in Rick and we looped in Vahid and those folks and Travis as well. And then again, they sort of turned around drafts in just yet another week. So so that is actually getting itself close to submission. I think a little bit later this week, just getting all things sorted with that. So also very exciting. Again, driven by the initiatives of Gopal. And so hopefully that'll be yet another thing that we can rack up for this year. We are submitting it first to eLife. This is on the recommendations of Rick Gherkin. Not sure how that's going to go, but there's a few other suggestions, maybe to go to archive preprint or possibly Frontiers. Not as a full. It's not a full research article. It's sort of just talking about the practice of using unit tests in scientific modeling. So it's sort of SciUnit focused for those of you who remember that journal club. But yeah, so that's kind of an amazing thing that's happened that we no concept of a month ago. Okay, then since we met last time, there was CNS, the Computational Neuroscience Society meeting. I'm not going to say any more about that because I was not there, but I'm hoping that updates from those of you who were there, Porig and Matteo, if you guys can share kind of your impressions, how it went, any things which relate back to the project that we should be taken under advisement, or any thoughts there would be great. So that's happened. Okay, and then finally, and last but certainly not least, which is very exciting. It's the culmination of a lot of efforts by a lot of different people. Giovanni sent a mail out to some of you kind of detailing all of the people that are involved with it. But Giovanni has really been the linchpin and the center point and the cornerstone for it. There's a site now, wormsim.org. There is a teaser trailer for folks that are not backers of the Kickstarter. But this really does, I think, put a opportunity for a public face on what we've been doing down to the level of code. And Giovanni asked if he could have some time here in this session to show a little bit behind the scenes and talk about pieces of it. I know that we, several of us who were involved in planning the Kickstarter from the beginning, had a lot of opinions and desires and hopes and dreams for what we wanted to see this WormSim be, and we haven't released it yet to the backers officially because we want to make sure that it is represents the highest quality and highest ideals of what we all have for what WormSim should be, and that we keep to our promises. So I would like to give Giovanni the opportunity here right at the top to walk through pieces of it with you guys and just see if there's additional feedback that you have on it. It has, I think there have been a few more updates even in the last week or so that some of you may not have seen. And I know others of you here have not seen anything in it, so some of this will be very new for you. And so I think this is kind of a good mix. So we've got some folks that have had a look, some folks that haven't, so that everybody kind of has different sort of set of impressions. But I was hoping that we could take, not more than 20 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes to just kind of talk through some things. Nobody's going to be offended if somebody has a suggestion, a constructive suggestion for improvement. There's obviously a trade-off between how many things or changes we can make between now and ideally when we'd like to release to backers. But I think this is a place where your feedback in real time, or if you want to write a note for after the meeting and send it to Giovanni, would be very much appreciated. So if you guys are cool with it, Giovanni, would you want to walk through the WormSim with folks?
Yes. So today we deployed a new version that, and I'm personally feeling comfortable that now it's to a stage that I'd like to show it to an extended set of people, rather than always the same people looking at it, because then the feedback kind of dies out. So, for example, I'm talking about the guys who are in this Hangout today, for example, and some of us already have access, but we can make it accessible to the rest of the people. Or again, it doesn't need to be now, but you can take your time maybe later and go through it yourself and see what you think, kind of stuff. But what I'm gonna do now is just go fly through it, just do a breadth kind of approach, because then I'll go from the start to the end of the flows, and I'm not gonna stop and read stuff because there's a lot of content that if we go and read everything that's in there, it's gonna take more than the duration of this meeting. But just to give you an idea of what the functionality is, and then, as I said, you can take time after and go in depth and give feedback on things that we are gonna skim through today. But let me share my screen. Okay, so that's the landing page that probably most of you have seen already. And yeah, the thing is shaking. If you click it, shows you the video that we posted on the open social media everywhere. So it's just a teaser and kind of encouraging people to sign up for an invitation. But at the beginning, we're just going to open it to backers because I think that's fair. Because those are the people who made it possible. But we do want to make it available to as many people as possible in the future, independent of what's the volume. We might be able to do that in the near future. But we just want to make sure that we're not crashing the servers. So it's not like anybody who wants an account just here's an account, and then there's all of a sudden 1,000 people ruining the experience for the backers who made it possible. So just taking it step by step, kind of releasing it in waves, and that's the approach. But yeah, so this is very much a landing page. I go and log in, and write and log in. So this is the first thing that you see when you log in. The spotlight, the worm, turning around, and some text that I'm not going to read all, but it's pretty much the introduction of the worm sim character. And you get to customize it. You can pick color, purple, and then you can give it a name. I'm going to call it Leo. Then it's a confirmation screen. Make it official and save. Okay. So this is a flow they're going to see once. And then they get to the main page of where the interaction is going to be. So there's a right panel with some text. So pretty much the only thing you can do is go ahead and click that arrow, and this is like an introductory part of the application where pretty much talking about what is this, a little bit of background of C elegance and why the OpenWorm team is doing that. So I'm skimming through all of that. I'll get to it later. Okay, so this goes on for a while, and yeah, feedback on that content is probably not the best now because we don't have time to go and read it all. But definitely any feedback on the tone and on what it says, that's welcome as well. And trying to strike a balance between the different kind of target audiences that back a Kickstarter, which is like a kind of a general public, really, kind of tech-savvy, kind of citizen scientist-oriented tool. So after you get to the end of that tutorial, what happens is these buttons here, and this is where we make available the output of the OpenWorm project. And down here, so basically now there's only two. There's a muscular system, which is pretty much the output of what Andrei and Sergey have done, and a number of other people have participated into the effort of translated into something that we can show on the web. And I'm going to show you that in a while. And then there's a simplified nervous system effort, which is what we know as C302, which is pretty much the C. elegans connectome that Porek worked a lot on, and a number of other people helped with. And we made it, so pretty much this is what is going to be there at the beginning. But as you can see, we're leaving room for more buttons. Another thing, and it could be anything really, anything that we deem interesting enough for the audience that this is aimed towards. So, for example, what comes to mind immediately is the muscle cell work we're doing. So you'll understand how that fits into this picture when I show you those simulations and what happens there. Plus, also the movement validation stuff. I think it would be very interesting to just have another button there that then opens up and shows the recordings of the real worms, kind of that kind of stuff. So there's a potential for exposing not just these, but kind of plug-in outputs from the OpenWorm project so that people can access them and make them available as we have more stuff, pretty much, that is worth showing. So down here there's tips, so you can go on and on and on. And if you want to contribute some, it's only a tab, of course. But yeah, so this is just tips on C. elegans, OpenWorm, fun facts and stuff. And it goes like this. There's a good view that we compiled. And this left-hand side, as you can see, it's like a virtual petri dish. That's the idea. You can zoom in, you can move it around, you can strip layers off, usual stuff that we all know from the correct Christian Grove's work that then was translated by us in the OpenWorm project into this format. So we know that model. Yeah, something interesting. You can just look at the anatomy. And so that's about what you can do in terms of this side. But let's go into the actual simulation environments. So let's start with the muscular system. So as you can see, This is a customized version of Geppetto. Awesome. With custom controls, as you can see, there's a logo, there's a worm crawling, there's button bars that let you select the muscles and the cuticle. There's a little brief description. And then, most notably, this is new, that we just deployed today. It was being worked on for the last week or so, and Balazs made a start on these tutorials, and Stephen reworked them and kind of adapted them for this medium, and then I myself did some work on it. So pretty much the idea here is that, like, if you take a user and just dump them on this simulation environment, that's going to mean very little to them, unless they already know what they're looking at. So what we tried to do was build this widget so that they can go. It says, "Hi Giovanni, it's me, Neo, crawling around. Welcome to WormSim. Hit next below to start my guided tour." And you can go and read all this stuff, pretty much telling you what you're looking at, and then things start happening. It gives you links, things that you can open, like it says, for example, if you're interested in the behavior of my fellow world check out these videos. You click, opens elegance behavioral database in another window, and so forth. Then you keep going, more text, explaining what is forward locomotion, what is this worm doing, and then more links, more resources. And now, as you can see, it's saying under my skin I have 95 muscles, and the muscles are now showing. And you can zoom. It encourages the user to zoom in and do stuff. So that you can do that. This thing keeps moving, and so forth. And keep going in the tutorial, mentioning cybernetic and the work done by Andrei and Sergey, and linking to the cybernetic repository with all the original work from Andrei and Sergey that we translated into the web medium, and so forth. So this is pretty much the idea. Like, for example, now we're bringing up a plot for this muscle cell that it's highlighted in yellow, and it kind of explains to the user, like, when this thing goes up, it means the cell is contracting. When it goes down, it means it's expanding. And pretty much, then it freezes the simulation. It says, look, this thing is up, the cell is contracted, and you can kind of explain so they can play and pause as much as they want, kind of explaining what they can do really with this, and so forth. So that's the gist of it. Always trying to maintain kind of a informal verbiage, just to keep it interesting and not too dry, but at the same time, we're trying to be rigorous in what we say. And this is an example of what this fund looks like. They can start it again. If they go next, it's like when you're at the end, you can start the tutorial again, or you can just do whatever you want at this point. So that's this is like I skimmed through it. I kind of flying through it so that we don't spend all day here, but it kind of is impressive that we went from the C++ based kind of recorded video over a couple of days of running simulation to just play this thing in the browser and it's working. And it was like really a lot of people working on this, like starting with Andrei and Sergey, then myself and Matteo kind of came up with a plan to extract something out of the particle-based simulation, particle positions and activation signals of the muscles. And then we worked with a guy who was a very talented guy who helped us with the skeleton extraction from the particle-based stuff to this thing you're seeing, and then animate the skeleton after you extract it, and then integrate it into Geppetto to show what we're showing you. So it was like it may seem like, oh cool, but this is a year of work of multiple individuals, a team of at least 5 or 6 people. No problem for it. So yeah, so this is the SPH recording, the muscles simulation. And then I'm going to go back and go into the simplified nervous system. Okay. So the approach we're taking for this one is more in terms of the connectome than in terms of simulation, because first of all, it's just easier to get across, and this is part of the feedback we're kind of we need in terms of everybody coming together and say, yeah, I think that's cool, or maybe ideas for showing the actual neural spiking. Because like if you go to live belgiopeta.org, we have this same simulation, and it's actually a dynamic simulation where the neurons are being run, like the simulation has been replayed, and you can see integrated fire dynamics, and the neurons are lighting up. But like dumping somebody who doesn't have a lot of knowledge about that into plots and things lighting up, it's kind of hard to get across. So what we're trying to do here is focus on the connectome and that aspect of what we're looking at. So there's a tutorial here as well, and trying to explain what they're looking at the neurons, nervous system, a bunch of links to give resources to people, and kind of show that they can select things, and that explaining in the next what these colors that they are seeing are. So the white one are the input cells to this yellow one, which is the one selected. The orange one is the output. The green ones are both input and output. Trying to explain it there, and then try and say what does it mean for neural to be an input to another, and basically explaining what this means, because it could just be a graph for all they know. So we're trying to kind of introduce the neuroscience concepts through this little guided tour, and then kind of zooming out and saying this is the head of the worm, and while this is, as you can see, there's another part of the worm that has also neurons that is not the head, and explaining a little bit about, introducing a little bit about those concepts, and it's going like that. Then bringing up the connectivity matrix and saying, all right, we're kind of afraid to show this because it's like, okay, what am I looking at? Even for me, like, it's pretty hard to relate to this, but we tried our best with this text, saying, trying to represent it. This represents a blueprint for the brain, where each of the dots is a connection, and it's like looking, trying to make a metaphor that's like looking at the blueprint for the architecture of a building, but it's for a brain, and it's hard to interpret it. So to relate to the fact that people are going to be a bit mind blown. But looking at this picture, it's like can help scientists to compare networks to each other. Basically, try to introduce basic concepts in a way that it's as accessible as possible, and so forth. So this is pretty much, and we got to the end of this one. So the reason why I was showing that, I just wanted to show that in this version we have this guided tours that were not there before, and you can start it again. So, okay, so there's a question. Yeah. So basically, it's not basically you cannot trigger the dynamic simulation here. We removed it because it was difficult to get across what they're looking at. So let's say that I go to this to show you what I mean.
Well, I think the other aspect, Giovanni.
Yeah.
The other aspect is that because it's an integrated fire simulation, it's not realistic firing patterns, and
yeah,
it's difficult enough trying to explain what it is supposed to be when it's not physiologically realistic. So it's best not to actually go into it.
Exactly. So that's also a component. So I'll show you what I mean, because probably it's easier if we have it in front of us if this is loading. So this is what it looks like when it's fired, when it's actually running the simulation or replaying the simulation, right? So you can see there's the head, My browser is slowing down a bit because I have the other one open, and I'm also sharing my screen. But this is like the integrated fire stuff, and the C elegance, the nerve ring is also spiking. So basically, just looking at this, it's kind of hard to make the case. Go and explain, oh, this is an integrated fire neuron. It's just not. It doesn't flow as well as talking about connectors. It's just an easier concept to get across compared to this. And then it goes flat. Why is it going flat? Nobody knows, because we're pretty much injecting random currents into a network and looking at what happens. So it's like removing confusion and kind of making the call to focus on the aspects of the simulation that it's easy, the aspect of exploring the connectome that people can easily relate to. And you can see it's in the shape of a worm. There's a lot of text that explains what they're looking at and kind of camera scripting, camera movements, and things like that. And then going a little bit into dangerous territory with the connectivity matrix, but trying to explain what that is and why it's important and so forth. So that's pretty much it. Since the last deployment, we introduced a number of improvements. In particular, now the transition between this screen and the simulation environment is much faster. So that was resolved. And also, this Matteo helped a lot with this, and I worked with him on it. Now, this crawling is smooth. It's probably all jaggered for you because it's over my streaming through and sharing my screen. So, but if you log in, if you have an account, if you log in, you'll see that it's fairly smooth, and you can show the muscles, and it's still smooth. So this was a major rework in some of the Geppetto front end. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Tutorials are new, but yeah, I would just want to hear if anybody has any feedback, and pretty much that's the extent of it. How long did it take me to go through it?
I think we hit about
We're still here.
20 minutes.
Yeah. Good. Thanks, Corey.
Chihuahua has a comment there. So.
Yeah. There's a major way to animate some scenario, light on what part of the world with some cause and effect. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, right now, we don't have that level of control because we're replaying something that was preset. So we cannot let them say, oh, inject a current in this neuron. So if that was possible, it would make a lot more sense. But also what Forex said, I think it's a big component that it's just hard to explain why do those curves look like that. Like if it was kind of a more familiar spiking pattern, probably slightly easier. But then you have to explain it's a model and it's an integrated fire model. What does it mean, integrated fire, and so forth. So for simplicity, and yeah, I mean, it's a discussion. So if anybody has proposals to integrate the dynamic part of that simulation into the tutorial, then you're welcome to take a shot at that. Yeah, thanks, Travis. So yeah, so one thing is me showing it to you, and the other thing is go through the experience yourself. And as I said, we'll kind of get on that. Oh yeah, so that's all I wanted to show. It's kind of interesting. Like it took more than a year to do this, and even more if you count that we built on top of stuff that was already done, like cybernetic stuff and Geppetto and all the C302 stuff. And then you can walk through it in like 10 minutes. But it took like multiple years to get there.
Hey, Giovanni, so in one section you show like the wriggling worm, right?
Yeah.
You know, I was just thinking, would it possibly be interesting to show a connection, one connection between the nervous system and the muscle system while it's doing the wriggling? Is that at each segment there's a very simple neural circuit, you know, with a little bit of inhibition, and you know, there's just a couple of neurons involved in that, and they're connected to the muscles. And I wonder if that would be interesting also to show, you know, as far as how because now because currently you've got a lot of neurons, and they're kind of just a big cloud of them.
Yeah.
If you had just a few of them and show how they could hook up to like one of the segments, muscle segments of the worm, of the 12 of them, maybe that'd be an interesting idea too.
Yeah, so that's kind of an idea, kind of the main idea, if I understand correctly, would be combine some sub-circuits to some muscles. Right?
Yeah, because there's a very simple circuit there, which, you know, inhibits one side while the other side's contracting.
Yeah.
And then it reverses, you know, so it's just a very simple, and it'd be interesting to see, for people to see that maybe.
Yeah, no, I agree. The challenge, the immediate challenge to that is that at the moment these two, like this thing you're looking at now, and the other one, they're two separate simulations.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. What we always said is like, right now, this is loaded. We are showing muscle system separated from the connectome, and the next step, I agree that it will be extremely interesting to like have the even if not a complete one, just maybe something like you described, have another button there that says like integrated muscular and nervous like subcircuits or something, and show that. But yeah, that's I think it's a very valid idea. I like it a lot. It's just probably gonna take a little bit of work to get there as well. But yeah, I mean, I think we are going that direction.
If I may,
Very, very cool.
If I may inject in here, so this is a lovely suggestion, and it's I think of it as well. Seeing this, and I think you know, we for this particular release, we had to compromise with some things that were possible, some things that were not possible, just in this particular instance. But I don't think I'm saying anything controversial here when I say that, you know, I think a lot of us view this as a first version of something which we will continue to iterate on. Joe said it insofar as adding things, buttons, but I think even just continually improving, and as well, I hope a call to action for new contributors coming into the project, learning about it the first time and saying, well, I can do that, I can add that stuff in there, and then, well, go for it. It's all open source. So so what you're talking about is definitely something that is high on my agenda, and sort of like passionate about getting. For this particular release, I think it was a lot just to get the platform. Now the delta between what you're saying and what we have now is much less than between no platform and what you're saying, and that's. I mean, yeah, it is, but I love this. I love the suggestion. It very much resonates with, I think, all of us. So.
Yeah, and the call to action is immediate for me. Is like, think creatively. Any of us who want to kind of some because this is like pretty much what we had ready to plug in there. But I know that there's a lot of other stuff. Like, it's almost there, and all it needs is like, okay, just think of it from the aspect of somebody who is interested in biology, somebody who wants to know more about what that is, and basically a little guided tour for whatever the output of the sub-project, the OpenWorm sub-project is, and then we can, it's easy enough to kind of make it into a format that we can show it in here, right? Yeah, it's work, but it's worth it. As I was saying before, and that's it will be a dream to see like other parts of the project being featured under here, so that more and more people can just go to this website and with their accounts and just access the output from the whole project, not just these two. That's just a start. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Other feedbacks, guys, here before we need to move on?
Could I ask just a technical point on when it's visualizing the muscle activity, the activation variables is quite often a kink in the sine wave.
Yeah.
Is that due to, or is that?
We've got it. So, yeah, that's a problem in the data. So I think when we generated the cybernetic recordings, I'll bring it up. We generated cybernetic, that's the thing you're talking about, right? So that's just a glitch. So that should be a sine wave. That thing is because we skipped some frames when we're recording. So that needs to be sanitized. Yeah, good catch. You could think of it as I don't know, it's just wrong, but there's no easy, there's nothing else to say. I mean, if it was a perfect sine wave, then it wouldn't be biologically accurate. But not that this makes it biologically accurate by any means.
Well,
Yeah,
I would say more. I would say more. If we were not looking at that problem, it would mean that the data were artifacted. But no, that is nobody in his righteous state of mind would think of make that artificially. So it is coming from cybernetic. We need to work with Sergey to fix that.
Yeah, I think it's just. I don't even think it's a cybernetic problem. It's just a problem of.
No, it's the interface, the integration.
Yeah. So when it dumped the data from the cybernetic output, somehow something got a little bit mixed up in a few steps. So maybe so it's just a matter of looking at that data and sanitizing it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Any feedback, guys?
I want to hear what Andre thinks about this moving worm.
Me too. Andre, what do you think?
Well,
that's your work, Andre. I like it.
Well, it looks quite impressive, both from technical point of view and as a possibilities of visualization. Very nice, smooth, and so on. When we finished the paper a few days ago and submitted it to the journal, I finally got the time to start work on generating other types of movement.
Nice.
And I think it will be very useful to add the result of this work to this worm sim.
Definitely.
So very soon I will focus on this.
It would be great, like even just adding another one of these bars up here so that the user can click and change the gait. Instead of crawling, it can do swimming, and that's pretty cool.
And it's very well that the first step here was done in doing all this data processing to make all steps from movement in cybernetic to movement in worm sim. So now it will be much easier when it was once done. So looking forward to my results and all the rest which is connected with this.
Cool. All right.
So very, very promising. Very nice.
Thanks, Andre. Okay. So is that?
Excellent. All right, I think we should move on here. I wanted to point to one thing here, which I thought was really well put in a single picture, and I think it applies as well to this effort here and a lot of these questions in terms of thinking about stuff going forward. So let me just show my screen here real quick. It's this. I retweeted this. So it says here how to build a minimum viable product. First one is not like this, and it's frowning face with a circle, a frowning face with two circles connected, a frowning face with like a car chassis, and then a happy face with a final car. And what it says is like this, happy face with a skateboard, happy face with a scooter, happy face with a bicycle, happy face with a motorcycle, happy face with a car. So it ends up at the same place. And I think we have, I think in this project, either by design or just by necessity, I think we really have been sticking to the bottom here, where we've really tried to put out, our partial work as we go. And I think maybe the car is still in our future, where the car is, the full simulation and it's dynamic and it's everything is super interactive and it's also extremely well vetted, and all these things which we're building into the project now haven't yet come out, to the output. But I think what we're not doing is the top thing here. I think we're not just waiting until we absolutely have everything before we're ready to go. So I saw this week and I was like, I'm gonna share that. I'm gonna share that with you guys. I think that's it's very well done the way we've done it, and we're gonna keep going.
Hopefully we're not at the skateboard, but
yeah, I think we're past the skateboard.
Yeah,
we're past the skateboard. Maybe we're not at the car yet, so we're somewhere.
No, definitely not at the car yet. Maybe the bicycle.
Very good. All right, so let's go ahead and talk through some other topics, get some other updates from other folks. Michael, I see that you're in, but I haven't seen your video yet, so you're next up on the agenda. But are you here, or you can just unmute or chat or kind of live?
I'm here, but somewhat inaccessible. If I could be pushed to the end, I'd appreciate it.
You got it. Okay, I'll defer you there. So then next is the Geppetto update from Matteo. I will do some editing here while you update Geppetto.
Okay. Well, I think I'm gonna be brief because I spent quite some time in the last month on work on the worm sim itself and on work on Geppetto in order to make some of the cool things that Joe was showing possible. So I had to spend quite some time on improving performance for the simulation, so that we could see the worm swimming smoothly as is, and yes, that took quite some time. I have linked the agenda of the latest Geppetto meeting for people that are interested in going into the details. So I suppose the only thing that I will try to do is to summarize the different tracks that are ongoing at the moment in Geppetto, and I will let Poreg talk about the CNS meeting. I was there. I was part of the workshop that was organized for open source collaboration. I was representing the OpenWorm project. I gave a talk about the OpenWorm project. It was well received, and it was a very interesting workshop because there were many other outlets that are doing research in the computational neuroscience space. Some big names like the Human Brain Project, the Allen Brain Institute, and all sorts of initiatives. But I will let Poreg talk about that. Because he also attended more extensively the meeting while I was there only for the workshop. And he can also talk about the poster that I wasn't there for. So the thing that I want to just try and recap for everybody here, because all these projects, as you probably noticed, they're kind of becoming bigger and bigger. And in the last Geppetto meeting, I tried to summarize the different things that are ongoing at the moment. So it is not detail, the level of detail where we look at individual tasks, but kind of things that are happening in parallel. So there is a new track which is about people that are interested in adding support to visualize electrophysiology data, and there was a meeting on this topic that is also linked to the agenda, and this would allow basically people looking at not only data that is coming from simulations, but also data that was recorded from experiment. And we tried to gather the first thoughts in terms of which formats, how to design the thing, etc. More details are in that meeting. Then another track is about allowing running experiments in Geppetto where it is possible to do parameter sweep. So it is possible to, instead of running one single simulation, defining one set of parameters as we're doing now, to be able to do this for a range of parameters. So defining a parameter grid and having then the server running all the simulations and aggregating the results together. There is a track about data analysis, where in the medium term we'll probably be looking at doing something simple JavaScript side, and in the long term we're thinking about doing Python-based analysis server side, but controlling it still from the browser. So we are adding support for SWC files, and we're working with we're working with the Virtual Fly Brain project to basically display inside Geppetto also the brain of the fruit fly. This is particularly cool because one of the goals that we had from the beginning for Geppetto was for it to be generic and versatile, and this is something that speaks to that. So the fact that, as you probably realized, over time we are able to see and play there with different models, etc. So this is something that is basically giving a sound proof of the fact that we can do more and we can evolve as the models change and as the complexity increases as well. So another track that is happening is the multiple aspect integration, which talks directly to what Tom was, for instance, suggesting there, with the fact of having a circuit and having a muscle. And the reason why it's not in WormSim yet, it's because it's also not in Geppetto yet, and it is work, and it is something that presents some challenges. So Dan Kruchinin was leading this effort. There's been quite some restructuring on Geppetto, so before going back to that, we had to wait for all the refactorings that were happening to finish. But now those are completed, and we'll be restarting this effort in the coming weeks. It's going to be as interesting as challenging. And yes, the various refactoring, it's something that you will find in the Geppetto board that we're trying to target one after the other. So, so this is pretty much what is going on at the moment, and there's many cards. There's many different people, and yes. Do you have any questions or anything I could be? I can go into more details about. I want to keep it brief so that we all have an opportunity to talk. But
what's the next release?
The next release is probably going to be tomorrow. I'm working on. I started working on wrapping it up today, and tomorrow, this week, is the limit. Also because then I will be disappearing for a couple of weeks as I'm getting married. So if I won't reply to emails, I'm probably somewhere nice.
Good excuse. Good excuse for a vacation. Congratulations again.
And but questions on Geppetto or anything that I said or that I didn't say?
Oh.
Cool. Take
Okay.
it as no.
Like, my folks are good on that. Thank you, Matteo. Let's go over to, looks like next on the agenda is Travis, updating on some of the OpenWorm, channel OpenWorm things.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a new mic, just confirm that everyone can hear me. I'm sure you can. It looks
Yes.
like the, okay, awesome. Yeah, so it's going to be a pretty quick update, but we've had a couple of hackathons since the last general meeting, and they both went really well, really productive. Great attendance, and we've got a lot done in each of those, both in ChannelWorm and in PyOpenWorm, and also is bleeding over into the muscle model and C302 repos now, where we're starting to set up some testing frameworks and trying to formalize the existing tests there. So we basically want to have a consistent testing framework across those, at least those 4 repos, that someone can kind of go from one to the other. Por, did you have a question?
No, I was just yeah, I'm going to hopefully at some stage comment on some of those issues. But yeah, there is the testing framework there already on the C. elegans project and muscle cells, the OMV framework.
Sorry,
so we need to.
Sorry, Jess, I think I have a bad connection. It lagged on the last thing you said.
Yeah, well, I think the main issue is how to integrate the existing testing framework in C. elegans NeuroMel project and the muscle project with the others, and I think it's still an open issue. So.
Yeah, totally, and yeah, we don't. Yeah, we certainly don't want to like compromise anything that's there, because there are obviously tests that exist in those repos already. So we want to get something that's flexible. The thing that we're going with, the framework right now that we're going with in the other repos that we're experimenting with, is called PyTest, py.test, and it seems to be like super flexible. Like you can run tests from any other testing framework within Python, obviously, in PyTest. And I heard somewhere that someone was running like C++ tests and everything from that framework, so that's really cool. So I'm sure we can, if there is any chance of having like a consistent testing framework across all the repos, this might be a potential framework to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that somebody could look into if they wanted to get into the OMV framework in detail. Right. The significant difference between those 2 repos and PyOpenWorm and ChannelWorm is that both PyOpenWorm and ChannelWorm are natively Python applications, whereas the other application, or the other repos, are mainly XML-based models, which need to be validated and converted to other NeuroMel-based formats, for which OMV is what was actually built for. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly useful to have a kind of common testing framework, but it's something that needs to be looked into in greater detail.
Right, totally. Okay, and besides that, we've had some more work on the web app, the ChannelWorm web app, which has basically been better refining the user interface, and Sridhar's also done some more curation to get more data in there. So that's been awesome.
Can you actually, Travis? I don't know if you have time right now to pull it up, but even if I think we just saw the screen where stuff's actually in it, might just
sure
show a lot of progress.
Yeah, you're talking about the web app right now?
Yeah, with the listing that has the digitized figures in there.
Yep.
Sorry to put you on the spot there.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Yes, I'm just going to widen this out a bit. Yeah, so these are all the figures that we have digitized so far. As you can see, there's quite a few. Let's see the exact number, 13 right now. Yeah, so these are figures that are uploaded. You can just come in here and click digitize, and it's also like super easy to upload a photo just by clicking that add graph button. And when you get the digitizer up and running, you can just sort of calibrate the axes and then click on each of the points, and then it gives us a nice CSV file when you click on series here. So we can actually download this, and it's stored in a database, of course, as well. And the challenge now is to get all this data, except maybe the pictures, but everything else, including the series, and all these other data points and experiments, patch clamps, ion channels, every bit of data now. The idea is to be able to export that into OpenWorm. So along with all these references and everything, OpenWorm has the ability to assert things, assert facts based on evidence. So all these will be tagged with evidence, and they'll basically use what OpenWorm has for that. So yeah, so this is what the web app looks like.
And how many series are in there right now?
13.
Cool. And
Yep.
so this is the work both of curation of Srijoy Tripathi to actually put stuff in there, and Vahid Gayumi and Milad Jafari has been actually building the interface. And so, and then, yeah, a lot of these conversations about tests and details with like that and what's required has also had some contribution from Rick Durkin. So,
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. Sorry. Please continue.
Oh, I think that was basically it for my update. Let me check. Okay, right. And Vahid did some work on, and he's still doing some work on the channel worm fitter. So that's tuning the parameters that we input from these digitized graphs, basically tuning those data points to make more realistic channel models. So there's been some movement on that, and that's still in progress. Oh, right, yeah, okay. And there's also been a lot of work by Chi and Kevin in this profiling thing. It's mostly in OpenWorm right now, so it basically gives us the ability to examine sort of introspectively how each function in OpenWorm right now is doing. So like how fast it is, because there were some issues with speed earlier. So this is basically opening up a whole new sort of regression capability to sort of analyze whether or not changes that we make to the repo are regressing us in terms of speed. So Chiwa, I believe, wants to factor some of this out, and Kevin as well, into something that's more modular, and we can apply it to other repos. And the next one that seems to be targeted is going to be channel worm, so we can see how the functions are doing over there in terms of speed. So there's been a lot of great work there too. Just going to have a quick look at the notes. Right, and there have been more tests in OpenWorm. We're always adding tests there, and we're also in the process of adding this new connectome. So I think I might have mentioned that at the last meeting that we have new connectome data. So now we're basically starting to integrate that so that OpenWorm can take advantage of that new data. And that's it for my update.
It's really impressive, Travis.
Yep, thanks. I just wanted to say, so thanks for that update. And between this and the last update of Geppetto, combined with what we saw with WormSim, I don't know about you guys, but I'm seeing things that are happening that have previously maybe been a little bit more disconnected. As like there's like some clear paths for how things move from like both what Matteo updated on and what Travis updated on, like in the WormSim. So new connectome, right? So that should be, so we should be speeding up the process where new connectome that Travis puts in over there, boom, it comes out on the WormSim, so people can click around and see the new connectome pretty quickly. Today, that's not an instantaneous operation, but it's the same thing, so that should be straightforward. And if there's electrophysiology support coming in Geppetto, we could put electrophysiology data from the worm up in WormSim. So for a lot of us, I think where we've had to kind of had an abstract idea of how this all kind of fits together is like now there's this place where these things can start to actually happen, and I just want to comment on that real quick. Okay, great. So Bradley, been listening patiently. Can you update us on some of the Devo worm stuff?
Yeah, so the DevaWorm project is coming along. Dick Gordon, one of the people in the group, and I are working on building something he calls differentiation trees. So this is where you take the lineage tree, and we have data from secondary sources, and we're reconstituting the tree basically. So we're reconstituting the topology of the tree. And actually, I have a link to one tree that I did just recently. This is for ascidians, which are a marine invertebrate. And this is it's like a lineage tree where you go from like the single cell stage out to, in this case, the 112 cell stage. And so this is just an example, and I'm working on building the C. elegans differentiation tree right now. And so Dick and I have been working on this comparison between C. elegans development and the Ascidian development. And I'll report more on that as we progress. But it looks like we're heading towards a paper. Yeah, so this is the tree here. Basically, the differentiation tree is where you go from a single cell, and every binary division in the tree, you sort the tree so that the smaller cell is to the left and the larger cell is to the right. And so you get essentially the same topology, but the cells are sorted differently. And we can take the data that we have more data than just this. This is the size of the cell. And we can then, look at the tree and, do topological analyses of development, like what kinds of things are going on in development. Why, for example, certain divisions are happening, why are cells coming out in the size that they're coming out, and so forth. So that's one thing we're doing. Another thing we're doing is working with Tom Porches. He's here in the meeting on this morphozoic platform that he has. And so the morphozoic platform is a cellular automata, which we're planning on complementing the work that we're doing with embryos and looking at single cells and their, how they divide in development. And, he's working on a platform that would take a cellular automata, which is a grid of cells that are, change state by rules. He can explain more to you what that is, and, sort of recapitulate development in some way. So the sorts of things we see in the differentiation tree, we should also be able to see in the cellular automata. If Tom wants to talk a little bit about morphozoic, he can join in now.
Yeah, that's the. There's another guy too who's working on this, Gabriel Pasquale. It's kind of based on the idea of morphogenetic fields, which have been kind of in and out of vogue in biology over the last century, actually. Turing actually explored that in a famous paper back in 1951. So they are evidently very real. They take various forms, but they're basically how cells signal each other to cause morphogenetic or embryogenetic or angiogenetic sorts of changes in tissues and organs. So as Bradley said, we've got a cellular automaton because it's a very simple way to start. And we are kind of, and from a computational biology aspect, this whole concept is very interesting, and it could be it's a very powerful sort of thing. And just recently, in the last couple of days, I was able to actually capture the computing power of our abstraction of a morphogenetic field in an artificial neural network. So think of it this way. We know how, for example, C. elegans develops embryogenetically. What we don't know is what are the rules of how are the cells signaling each other? How are they talking to each other so that they all form the correct structure? So we're trying to reverse engineer that using an abstraction. in a very simple sort of technique. So it's fun, and it's actually sort of promising to, you know, show something. So at some point in the future, I'll have some demos, I'm sure. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we're kind of, well, it's kind of disconnected right now, but we're hoping to bring it together. The other thing we're doing in our group is we met with a guy from UCLA who's the head of the Elegant Minds group. So it's a group of students who do imaging of, they're doing C. elegans imaging. And so he has this light sheet microscopy technique that they are perfecting, and he's going to get us some data for the C. elegans embryo. So this is very high quality, three-dimensional microscopy data where you can get very good resolution of the cells. And so, hopefully if he can generate some data, we can get some sort of technique for segmenting out the cells. The shape of the cells, the size of the cells, and really more data or more information than we have with types of data that are available. And so that'll be interesting. We're just kind of in the beginning stages of that. So.
Awesome. Sounds like great progress.
Yeah.
And sorry I haven't been able to join in recently, but I look forward to catching up as well with you guys in the next regular meeting.
Yeah.
That's a good progress. Excellent. And I love this cellular automata stuff as well. And I think that's a really cool way to look at the rules. And yeah, it's a very exciting space. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes left here before we all turn to pumpkins. So let's see what we got. So I assume Michael's still working away on movement validation. We have a few more folks to check in with. Michael, do you want to go now, or should we check in with everybody else and leave you absolutely for the last? Would that be better?
You can go with the other people. It's fine. Or I can go now.
Okay.
But yeah, why don't we go with the other people?
Great. So let's see. Just looking around. So we got Andre and we got Porig for updates. So I'm going to go with Andre first, because he's furthest to the left on my screen.
Okay, I think I have mentioned the majority of things which were done. So first of all, we have completed the paper and sent it to the journal. Next, we started working on the second paper, which was already waiting for quite long. This one is devoted to construction of worm body and some experiments in silico, measurements of worm movement parameters, for example, how it depends on viscosity and so on. What is the velocity of this worm in the crawling mode? Maybe we try swimming also, and so on. As I told, we plan to try more complex types of movements. So right now I made some preparations to start this work, and I hope at the next meeting I will have some results to show. Well, what's more?
Okay, great. Yeah, and yeah, just as a side note for folks, I found it interesting. One of the papers that Andre found for this new paper, which was like working to cite what's happened in the biophysics, biomechanical research of the worm. So it's just one of the experiments they did, I think, is fascinating. So they have to take a worm, they have to drug the worm, so the drug is unconscious, in order to do this experiment. So first of all, it's like, what does it take to drug a worm? Okay, so you got an unconscious worm, then you extend it out so that you're sort of holding it between 2 points, okay, and fixing it using micro pipettes. And then there's this probe, this little tiny little probe, where you like, while this thing is like you're stretched out and you're holding it, you can measure the exact amount of force, and you're like bending the worm. The experiment is just like repeatedly bend the worm and measure the force with which it takes to bend the worm like this, and and then this yields numbers for you of like how elastic a material is, and what kind of material it acts like. I was like, I don't know. I hate to be that worm. It's sort of the biggest insult of being drugged and then like nudged in order to figure out how bendy you are in terms of your body. So
maybe he likes it.
Yeah, maybe it's like a massage. Yeah, let's think. But it's unconscious, so does it really get to appreciate it? I don't know. Maybe it wakes up very relaxed. I would hope. Okay, and then let's go to Porig. How's it going on your side?
Okay, yeah, most of the things I've been involved with have been mentioned already. The CNS workshop, it was a very good workshop on open collaboration in computational neuroscience. So there were a good number of people there. Actually, most of the presentations from that have been put up on the website that I can send a link to you now. It's probably in the agenda, but I'll also just put it here. Yes, so hopefully more will come out of that, and I'm definitely getting a feeling that a number of these large-scale brain initiatives like Alan, like the Human Brain Project, are definitely getting more into sharing, and the really good thing is that OpenWorm is being seen as a prime example of how to do this type of open collaboration, and we're definitely getting mentioned and quoted quite a lot, so more people are kind of following the lead from that point of view. So yeah, so if anybody has any questions on that, just let me know. Most of the presentations, as I say, are on the website page. The other thing I've been working on a little bit in the last while is both PyNeurML for running simulations, including C302 through Python, and related to that, a framework for optimizing models based on Mike-Fellow's NeuroTune. So that's getting in very nice shape at the moment, and I've made it a little bit more generic for generic neural models, and hopefully making it easier to say optimize based on the conductance densities according to these properties that I extract from data. It's still work in progress, but there are some working examples. You can find them in the PyNeurML and some in C302. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a moving target and refactoring and moving things around, but most of the code there should, at any given stage, download and run some simulation. I'm hoping to get it a bit more stable in a week or two and nail around about it a little bit more. And not too much else to report at the moment, so yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for hosting that meeting and for giving OpenWorm a chance to speak there. I think it was really good to get that out in front of that audience, and hope you're not too overwhelmed with all the issues on GitHub. But I do appreciate your feedback on some of those that are coming out of the modeling side. I know there's been a lot to keep up with. So. And I didn't mean to overlook Chiwai as well. We sort of mentioned your work in passing with Travis's side, but what would you like to give an update as well, Chiwai?
Oh, well, there's not much of an update from me. I've just been trying to keep track of what's going on with the whole project through the hackathons. But I got a chance with Kevin to do some of the profiling stuff, which was something good because that's what I used to do. So what's interesting is we're doing this for the Python code. This could be extended to the Java code as well, and I'm trying to look at various other stuff for the languages and the frameworks that we use and see if we can come up with something where we can build a framework that can span the whole project. So if we can make it easy to figure out how each component performs, then we could actually start to maybe tune the stuff for later. So I'm envisioning that at some point this thing is going to have to go to the parallel domain, and so when that happens, we're going to have to look at from a lot of detail.
Cool. Thank you very much for that stuff. Yeah, I mean, you know, the current PyOpenWorm release, it's like most functions perform pretty well. There's some functions that perform kind of poorly, and beyond just a minimal amount of performance. And so while we're also fixing the performance problem, it's just sort of raises the question of like, yeah, well, it'd be good to know if suddenly something starts performing really badly. It's a particular issue with something where you've got an RDF database, because it's possible to make queries that really take a very long time to resolve. So having that reassurance that folks aren't checking in stuff that's like it works, but then it's like a year. We've also already run into places where we've literally maxed out the Travis CI time, the maximum time for running the test. So I think it's like, I don't know, like 35 or 55 minutes or something. And after that, Travis is like, sorry, we can't run your tests anymore. And like we were actually running into that in some cases. So so anyway, so I'm glad that folks are looking into that, and that folks with a passion for it have a way to add that and contribute here. So thank you for that. Okay, last but certainly not least, Michael, it is your moment. And he just dropped! So close. Okay, you're back.
That was funny. I clicked on a bookmark instead of unmute.
Yep, that happens.
All right. So I see I have 30 seconds, so I'll just very quickly say that in the last month, things have been reasonably quiet, but we have managed to do what we've been saying we wanted to do in the minimum viable product for a long time. So we can now go from a set of contour data to a fitness function like scalar value, which is at this point the minimum p-value across all the features that we're calculating. So that's just a very simple scalar value. So if the worm is significantly different than the set of control worms, then the minimum p-value is going to be quite low there. So ideally you have a high minimum p-value. So that sort of acts as a fitness function there. So right now I have this, so I've constructed this very basic worm example, which is a straight line that doesn't move, and then also the same straight line but moving around a little bit, and it does affect the minimum p-value as expected. So that's good. And next I think would be to finally deliver a robust specification to the Geppetto team for those contour points, so that I can instead receive these contour points from the actual OpenWorm simulation instead of just this constructed basic example. And then we'll see what scalar value we get out of that. So there's a lot of other people working on some other things, but I'll just let you read that if you want. But that's sort of the big headline thing that I think we were able to do this month.
Brilliant. You reminded me of one thing that I came across this last month when you talk about the fitness function. We've talked about this fitness function as a concept for a long time, but as a name, there was this news. So in astronomy, there's this Kepler mission, which is looking at galaxies across the universe, and is looking in search of planets that have properties that make them Earth-like. In that it's a planet that's like a certain distance from its local sun, and it seems to be revolving in around the same amount of time, and I
think it's just looking within the Milky Way, but yes, your point is taken, yes.
Okay, yeah. So it's the Kepler missions, forgive me if I'm not being the expert astronomer. What stuck out to me was they have something called the Earth Similarity Index, or ESI, and it's like a 0 to 1 scale, and as they find new planets that are getting closer and closer to it, it's sort of reported out. So basically, on this Earth Similarity Index, Earth is a 1, and anything that's not Earth is less than a 1. And so, and this is like a set of criteria for what go into it. And I think the latest thing they found was like a 0.88, something that some planet has a 0.88 Earth Similarity Index. So I was like, hey, this is like what we've been talking about in the project. We have a worm similarity index, a WSI, where 1 is the real worm, and we don't know yet where our simulation is in terms of what, because we haven't like fully calculated it, but we would have like a worm similarity index, and like every month we'd be like, hey, we report it. What I liked about that too is because the Kepler mission is like, it's ongoing. Hopefully they continue to find better planets, but it's not like everybody's like tapping their foot being like, okay, so when are you going to find like the one that's exactly like Earth? It just sort of makes a metric that I think is cool. So
Okay, that's what I'll start using.
If folks like it.
I like it.
It's nice. It's nice.
Okay, guys, we're a little bit over. Anybody want to make any more comments or statements here before we break for this month?
Just wanted to add something.
Yeah.
I showed the worm sim and the walkthrough, and one thing that I'm not sure that I did say, but all that stuff is on GitHub, so you can actually clone it and run it locally. It's not like that's not possible, and I didn't remember if I mentioned that, so I'm just linking the one bundle you need. Of course, you need Geppetto as well, and yeah, I'm available if anybody wants to give it a shot. Hopefully, get it up and running. Just hit me up on one of the multiple channels we have, namely email, and yeah.
And also file issues, by the way.
Yeah, like just put stuff, and you can open cards or all that good stuff with you.
Cool. Thanks for that. Anybody else? The good of the order? All right, everybody. Thanks so much again for your time. It's been an exciting month. And we will see you again next month.
Oh. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.